we adapt and we adjust and we keep doing what we're doing. Sometimes you don't have to do anything different. Sometimes it's just the perception of, okay, I thought I was getting 1,000 downloads a month. Maybe a lot of those weren't real. Maybe a lot of those were automatic downloads. Maybe people weren't actually listening. Okay, yeah, that kind of sucks. All right, well, at least now I know. At least now I know that I have 500 real people listening every single month, or I have 500 real listens. Podcast Growth Nation, welcome back to another episode of Podcast Growth University, where we talk all things podcasting all the time. I hope you enjoyed the latest episode. It was episode number 89, one word that helped us succeed. One word that really helped us succeed is technically the title. And we talked about resources and resourcefulness in that episode. Today, for episode number 90, did the Apple update affect your listens? If you're freaking out because your listens have been low or lower since, let's just say Q4 2023 and then Q1 2024, there is a potential answer. Either you stopped doing everything you were doing before and your audience ran away. That's obviously a potential. Or you are just experiencing what was an update in Apple's operating system, in one of the iOS updates. So there's been a lot of different versions of what I'm going to say here. There's been times where if somebody subscribed to your show, it would automatically download all your episodes. I mean, that's really the big one. That was a really big one. So listens might have been different in the past. But what Apple did recently, and I have a written piece up here from a website called Inside Radio. I want to give credit to where I found this. So what happened in September was Apple released an iOS 17 update. And previously, when somebody would unpause automatic downloads, so if you listen to a show on Apple, you can go and click automatic downloads. And it'll automatically download all the stuff. It'll automatically download the episodes. You can also pause that or turn that off. Before, what would happen is if somebody unpaused that, it would download all of the episodes between when they paused it and when they unpaused it. So let's just say hypothetically for us, for Next Level You, let's say they paused it for a month. That's 30 episodes. So that would count as 30 downloads right there if they unpaused. Imagine if 10 people did that. That's 300 downloads, or listens is really what I call them. But it doesn't work like that anymore. So now so one of the reasons that was happening is because it was kind of inflating download numbers. So here's the thing. If your numbers are affected by this, it doesn't mean you have less listens than you did before. It might actually mean you have the same amount of real listens that you did before. So Apple is now not doing that. It doesn't really work that way anymore. You're not the only person seeing this effect. I believe the top 20 podcast producers, so a lot of shows are under networks where they might produce 10 really big shows under a network. The top 20 producers, I believe, saw a downturn of 25%. So if they were getting 100,000 downloads a month, that went down to 75,000 downloads a month, hypothetically. This says a 24% decline in global downloads for the top 20 publishers. And I think this was in January. So again, the reason it's still potentially happening now is because not everybody updates their phone right away. Not everybody updates to a new operating system on Apple right when the update happens. So before, what was happening is Apple Podcasts were automatically downloading all of the unplayed episodes. But now they only automatically download the new episodes moving forward. So if you click on automatically download episodes on a Friday, and there was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday episodes, none of those are going to get downloaded. What the Friday episode will if you do that before the episode drops. That's one of the reasons we're not seeing the same numbers. But again, it doesn't mean that you're getting any less downloads. It might mean you're getting the same amount of downloads you were before, but it just isn't, it wasn't real before. I know it's really hard. It's really hard to not get emotional about listens when something like this happens. But the fact of the matter is, you might just be getting the real numbers that you were getting before, and certainty is a good thing. Accuracy is a good thing because now you understand, oh, I was getting 1,000 downloads a month before. And nothing really, I don't know, nobody was reaching out. Okay, now I'm getting 500. Oh, interesting. Well, I'm doing 5 episodes a month. So that's an average of 100 listens per episode. So maybe I have 75 to 80 listeners. That makes a lot more sense why people aren't reaching out. Okay. Or then you look and you reference whatever list you have of who listens to your show. And you say, wow, I know 50 of the 80 to 100 people that listen to my show. That's awesome. That's really good news. The reason I wanted to do this episode, and I don't know how often I'll do episodes like this. I think they're important, but it's usually not something I'm super focused on just because I like to try to control what I can control. And that means showing up every day on our other podcast, showing up every week here, trying to put together the best episode I can that's going to help you the most. Same for our other podcast. Yes, the stats are important because it shows growth and it shows if you're making progress. Yes. But I tend not to obsess over listens. I did in the beginning for sure. But now I've learned that you're going to have some up months, you're going to have some down months. It just matters where the trend line is going. Will this affect the trend line potentially? Yes, it might. But I would hate for you to see your download numbers go down and you assume you're doing something wrong or call it quits. I don't want that to happen. Because who knows what's going to happen? They might end up changing this back to something in the future and your download numbers might explode. Who knows? We don't really know. We don't really know how that's going to work. The thing that I'm noticing, or that not that I'm noticing, that people are noticing, is that the ad revenue, if you're going to run ads, doesn't really change that much because it's still the same amount of real people as it was before. That's the thing. Before, I think people know if you have 100 episodes in between when somebody paused and unpaused, they didn't listen to all 100 of those episodes. That's not 100 real downloads. It's 100, you get credit for 100 downloads, but the person probably didn't listen to any of those episodes. That's not necessarily helping you. That might be leading you in the wrong direction. Because you might think, well, I'm getting all these downloads, but nothing seems to happen, or nobody reaches out, or whatever it may be. So just don't freak out if your downloads are going down. For some clients, it didn't affect them at all. It didn't affect them at all. Awesome. Other clients are crushing it right now. Other clients are definitely seeing this. And right now we produce like 50 something, 55, 54 shows. So there's a lot of data. I can look at a lot of data. But the clients that start freaking out and doing stuff differently probably aren't going to be very successful. Unless different means more and better and higher quality. If that's the kick in the butt it gives you, if it gives you a little kick in the butt of, I need to do better, I want to get better guests, I want to improve my microphone, I want to get a new camera, I want to do this, I want to do this. Awesome, that's great. That's great. But if on the other side, it makes you say, you know what, maybe this isn't for me, people don't like it anymore, people aren't resonating with what I'm saying, that's probably not true. Now, here's the other thing. If the majority of your listens come from Apple, it's going to be a bigger hit because this is an Apple thing. It's an Apple podcast thing. If the majority of your listens come from Spotify, you might not notice this at all. If they come from iHeartRadio or they come from Pandora or they come from any of those other places, you might not notice any difference. So that's why maybe if you don't notice a difference, maybe the majority of your listens just don't come from Apple. Or if you're only getting 15 listens per episode, and I don't mean only as you should be ashamed of that, I just mean in comparison. If you're getting 15 listens per episode, it might not matter that much because the odds of people, those 15 people pausing and then unpausing and pausing and unpausing is probably just lower. But if you had 100,000 people listening, statistically, some of those people are going to pause and then unpause. Hopefully that makes sense.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Hurwitz. So last year, I wanted to quit everything. I wanted to throw in the towel. I wanted to hang up my microphone. And Kevin said no. Kevin said, keep going, Jen. You've got this. And oh my God, I'm going to cry. And I did. Coaches need coaches, y'all. And working with Kevin has been one of the best experiences of my life. Oh my God, I'm crying. Kevin, you are the best. I could not do this without you. And thank you. Thank you for being you and the amazing human that you are.
I'm trying to see if there's anything else on this. But again, there isn't a lot of, there's some data on this, but the podcast industry is still relatively the Wild West where we don't really know what's going on. And I could tell you I have as many listens as I want and you wouldn't know. You could really never find out unless I showed you. That's the dangerous thing. So I don't really know how much big shows are being impacted. I can tell with our clients, and I can tell by looking at that, this show, Podcast Growth U, has not been affected, I would say, at all. I haven't noticed anything. Next Level University, I've noticed a downturn for sure. But I've also seen that happen many times before, and it might just be a low month. That's the other thing. The weather is getting nicer. We have a big listener base on the East Coast of the US. The weather is getting nicer. People are getting outside more. People are going for walks. So things just change. Things just change. Control what you can control, influence what you can influence, but sometimes you can't worry about the stuff that you can't influence. Now, yes, you can influence your listens by doing more and promoting more, getting on other shows, all the stuff we talk about here, of course. But I just don't want you to get too upset, get too disappointed, get too disheartened, because this might not be anything that you did. And if anything, sometimes the best place to be is the most accurate place. And maybe this is what this is going to create. Ultimately, I think that's what they're trying to do, is they're trying to figure out, how do we get the most accurate data? Yeah, I know it says 500 people downloaded it, but how many people actually listened to it? How many people actually listened to the episode? Because that's a whole nother thing, and I don't know the answer to this because I haven't found it yet. But if somebody automatically downloads your episode, I don't know what percentage that it considers that a listen. Does it say, well, they listen to 10% of the episode, 20%, 30%? I don't know, because if they don't listen to any of the episode, I don't even know if it counts as your consumption rate. And we've talked before about the three things mattering for you getting on Apple top charts is 1, your consumption rate. It's 2, the amount of subscribers you have, and 3, it's the amount of listens you get in a period of time. I don't know. I don't know how that works. You have to imagine it couldn't count as a percentage of a listen if the person isn't actually listening through. So if anything, I wonder if that might not hurt your numbers. I don't know. And when I say hurt your numbers, I mean hurt the consumption rate. If you had 100 people listening to that episode and 80 of those people, it was on automatic downloads, I don't know what that would do to your numbers. I don't know what your consumption rate would look like. I don't know. I'm not sure. There's a lot of stuff that's still up in the air. So the moral of this episode, and this will be a shorter one because it's just very specific. The moral of this episode is sometimes Apple is going to make changes. Spotify is going to make changes. These providers, these platforms are going to make changes. And these changes are going to affect us as podcasters. Just like when YouTube changes things, it changes streamers and it changes content creators and the way they monetize and all that stuff. It's just different. We adapt and we adjust and we keep doing what we're doing. Sometimes you don't have to do anything different. Sometimes it's just the perception of, okay, I thought I was getting 1,000 downloads a month. Maybe a lot of those weren't real. Maybe a lot of those were automatic downloads. Maybe people weren't actually listening. Okay, yeah, that kind of sucks. All right, well, at least now I know. At least now I know that I have 500 real people listening every single month, or I have 500 real listens every single month. I think that can be empowering. So, moral of the story is, if your listens are down, do not freak out necessarily, because this could be a really big reason of why that's happening. But it's also it's also a really good motivator on why you can try to get people to listen on other platforms, not just Apple Podcasts. When I share, so when somebody says, hey, where can I find your podcast? I don't send them a link to Apple. I don't send them a link to Spotify. I send them our Buzzsprout share page, which has all the places. It has Apple and Spotify and Google Podcasts, which is now going to cease to exist very shortly. And YouTube Music is going to be YouTube Podcasts. That's another change that's happening. But it has all the platforms so you can listen where you want to listen. I don't direct people to Apple anymore. I direct people to all of them, and then they can choose where they go. Here's the other thing. I don't know what the percentage is, but it's something like maybe 40-something% of the world doesn't use Apple. I believe 40-something% of the world uses Android. And then maybe 40-something% of the world uses Apple, and then there's whatever, some smaller ones in there. So that's another thought process. You might, if you're in a different part of the world and the majority of your audience doesn't use Apple products, this might not affect you at all again. Or you might never suggest Apple. So just another thing to think about. For a long time, we would just send our Apple link and say, this is our podcast, you can listen on Apple. And then we started to look at the data, and the majority of our listens are there, but it doesn't mean people want to listen there. Maybe they want to listen somewhere else. So I'll let them choose. If you have any questions on this, reach out at NeverQuitKid on Instagram or Kevin at nextleveluniverse.com, because I know this can be confusing when it comes to stuff like this. Maybe at some point I'll do an episode on the death of Google Podcasts, which is coming very quickly. I don't know the exact date off the top of my head, but you probably got an email if you were on Google Podcasts, if you were using that as one of your platforms that you were getting your episodes pushed out to. YouTube Music is going to be, I guess it's going to be YouTube Podcasts. So all you have to do is create a new playlist on YouTube for your YouTube channel, and you can create a podcast playlist, and then it becomes a YouTube podcast. That's the way it's going. I don't know if that's their long-term plan or goal, but that's what it looks like for now. So if you have any questions on that, reach out. As always, if you feel stuck, if you don't know where to go next, if you have questions, if you have concerns, if you feel lost, whatever it is, my link for a free 30-minute podcast breakthrough session will be in the show notes below. I don't know what we're going to do next week. I'm not sure yet. But I think what we'll do is, should you do pre-calls before guest interviews? There's a couple of different thoughts on this. So I think it'll be a valuable episode because I'm sure some of you do pre-calls, some of you don't. You have your reasons for doing them. You have your reasons for not doing them. So let's talk about that. We'll talk about that next week for episode 91. As always, I hope the content is coming to you easily. I hope you feel confident when you're naming your podcast episodes. I hope the guests that you're sending messages to respond. I hope the people who are doubting you are starting to believe in you. I know that was one of the hardest parts. And I hope you're loving it. I hope you're loving the journey, and I hope you're getting fulfilled by podcasting. Until next week, keep on crushing it, keep on podcasting, and I will talk to you then.